Thanks, Scott. Again, my name is Scott Mizek. Today's webinar, again, Map 3D and Civil 3D collaboration. We will be bringing in GIS data. We'll be bringing in data and converting it for use within Civil. And then we'll be taking Civil data, lines, polylines, arcs, and we'll be converting that into GIS data. So we got three different versions, GIS to GIS, GIS to Civil, and then Civil to GIS. So before we begin, I always like starting out with a wonderful poll. And today I have a poll that is, what role does GIS play in your company? We import GIS data for civil project development. So you actually will use GIS data when you're doing a civil project or maybe other projects besides civil. We export our line work out as GIS. So I might take center line of road shots that were done by your surveyors and actually turn that into GIS data. And then for those people that work with GIS, we update our GIS data with even more GIS data because we're GIS data geeks. And then the infamous, what is GIS and how do you spell it? I believe there is a silent P in GIS. I can't be confident though. But looks like, as expected, the majority have been using GIS for their civil projects, or they've actually been exporting out their line work as GIS. So that's always good to know. Hopefully you'll maybe pick up one or two different points in this. That might just help you be that much more efficient. So importing GIS. I want to bring in GIS data. I have two options. I have Data Connect and I have Map Import. Both are valid reasons, but they have their own pros and cons. Data Connect. Why? Because I want to bring in GIS data, but I want to leave the information stored outside. I have 13 different options in Map on what kind of data I can bring in. So I got my ARC SDE, industrial model, SQL connection, ODBC, Oracle, PostGRE, SQL, raster image, STF shape, and so on. So 13 different GIS formats I can bring in. The other benefit to Data Connect is the ability to do a coordinate conversion. A lot of the data I bring in is in lat long 83 because I get it from the government, USGS, US Census, and from there it's, well, I want this in Hennepin County US Survey Foot. Maybe I want it in Minnesota State Plains, maybe in Iowa, Wisconsin, or the Dakotas. I want to be able to redefine my coordinate system, and this will actually reshape my information. Query filters. I like query filters because what I can do is I can bring in a shapefile that has a column that might be, if we're talking storm pipe, maybe I want to query down and only show the pipe that is 15 inches in diameter. I can do a query filter and say isolate all pipe sizes that equal 15 inches. And now I have the ability to only show that 15. Feature layers. Feature layers are its own unique layer, so I'm able to throw all a shapefile or an STF file on one layer, and I can turn it on, I can turn it off, and then within that feature layer I can theme it. So maybe my pipe shapefile, 15-inch pipe is green, 18-inch pipe is red, 24-inch pipe is blue, 30-inch is orange. So I have, again, the ability to change the appearance within a feature layer. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, the data is stored outside the drawing. So my drawing, if it's a data connection, it's going to be a much smaller size drawing, which means my processor is not going to be taxed as much, which means my drawing is going to be more fluent and easier to manage. Map import. Why? Because every now and then I want my data to be used for civil. I want that center line of road shot, or I want that line representing a pipe network. I want to be able to use it in my design. I want to be able to use it as line work in my drawing. I want to be able to use it, manipulate it. Again, there is coordinate conversions. Well, sort of. I do have the ability, you can see up in the top here, current drawing coordinate system. No coordinate system assigned to current drawing. Well, if there's no coordinate system assigned to it, it doesn't know what to convert it to. So it says coordinate conversion will not be performed. Well, if you do a map import and you don't have a coordinate system, it's going to bring it in its native format. So if I brought in a shapefile for all the lines of Hennepin County, it's going to know it was in LL83 and it's going to come in that way. Once it's in, I won't have the ability to say, oh wait, I want this in Hennepin County US survey foot, so I'm not going to get that ability to have it transform itself. So is there coordinate conversion? Yes, but only in the beginning, kind of like Civil 3D. There are spatial filters within the map import. So so I see spatial filters. I can say none and it will bring in the entire shapefile. I could say the current display and it will only bring in what my viewport zoomed in at. Well, this works really great if you've already got data in there and you know where you need to be. But if this is your first file that you're bringing in as a map import, you really don't know where you're at. So doing the spatial feature really doesn't pay off if it's your first one. Now, if I already know my bounding limits and I can zoom into that, then yeah, spatial features work great. Drawing layers. This is, instead of a feature layer, now it goes on a drawing layer. So just like in your layer manager, I have the ability to say, hey, my shapefile is this. I'm going to put it on this drawing layer. Maybe I want to put it on layer 0 because everything works great when it's on layer 0. Data columns. I have the ability to reduce the file data that comes in. I might have a shapefile that has 35 columns in it, all the way down to, if it's like a center line of a road, the left to address, the left from address, the right to address, the right from address, maybe zip code left side, zip code right side, and a bunch of information that I don't really need. With the data column, I have the ability to actually say, I only want these 5 columns. I only want these 4. Sometimes too much information is just overwhelming. I want to be able to reduce it down to just the 4 columns that I really need. Import polygons as polylines. If it's a closed parcel shapefile, it'll actually bring it in as polylines. And then I have that capabilities of reducing the datum column to actually convert the tabular data into object data. And object data is what is used when we definitely want to take our civil objects and bring it into a GIS format. So with that, we will actually jump to object data. Object data, it has tables. You're able to manually create your own table, and that's what I have over on the right-hand side. I created a table called storm pipe, and I added a field called pipe shape, gave it a value of characters, and then a default value of round. And then pipe size, integer, and then the default value is 27. Length, if I want to put in a length of my pipe, I just defaulted it to 100 feet. Material, invert out, invert in, structure to, structure from. I quickly created those fields that I can assign those to my civil objects. So I have a polyline representing my pipe. I can actually assign this data table to that line and then plug in these values, and that's going to assist me when I want to bring in civil objects, lines, and polylines and turn it or convert it into GIS data. So the creation of the variables, these were my variables. I have character, I have integer, I have real numbers, and such. The ability to attach objects, or attach a table to a line, or even detach that table to a line. And then editing. We'll get into the editing in a little bit further down the road. So right there, those are my two options of bringing GIS data in, and that's using the data connect, which it will remain a GIS shapefile or SDF file, or the map import, which will then convert everything to lines and polylines. What happens if I want to convert GIS data into other GIS data? So I brought in a shapefile, say, of all the lines in Hennepin County, and I want to export out only the lines that represent highways and interstates. What I have the ability to do is I actually have the ability to say query to filter. Again, just like I said with the pipe network, say only show me the 15-inch pipe. What I can do is I can do a query to filter, and I can query the MTF-CC code and look for S1630, which is interstates and highways. Query my data down, and it will just isolate just the objects that match the MTF-CC code of 1630. S1630. And then once I have that isolated down, I can right-click on the feature layer and then say export layer data to SDF. And what that will do is that will create a shape file or an SDF file, GIS data, that will only have the S1630 codes in it. That's one of the simpler ways of doing GIS into GIS. The other way is actually doing what's called a bulk copy of a shapefile. And this is, again, GIS into GIS. So what I can do is I can have a shapefile of, say, Hennepin County lines again. And what I'll do is I'll have a source. So I'll pick the original, and then I'll target it. And what this will allow me to do is once I've targeted it, I could leave it as is. But what's the point of having a shapefile if it's going to be identical to the original shapefile? What this allows me to do is actually reduce the number of columns or the data. So again, if I got those 40 columns for a type of road, maybe I only want those 5 codes. By bulk copying a shapefile, I'm able to reduce the number of columns in the data. So I went from 40 down to 5. To do this, it does require, it sounds kind of silly, but it requires a blank shapefile. So I am going to be forced to create a folder and do a data connect to that folder. And from there, I will then run the bulk copy command, which we will do in a little bit. And at that point, I can then re-import my new shapefile that was created. Those are the two main ways of doing GIS into GIS. But what if I want to do civil into GIS? Well, there's 3 basic ones. Map export, you can type in at the command line, map export. You can also do, it was on the ribbon, they removed it from the ribbon. You can actually put the icon back in your ribbon if you want, but you could do, I've modified mine a little bit, the DWG to SDF. There is a map export icon that you can add in if you choose to. But when you do the map export, it will give you this screen over here, and you have these options that you can export out civil objects. So I see my Autodesk SDF files, but I also see my Esri shape files. Those are my 2 common ones that I use most often. There are MicroStation files in there, but again, SDF and SHP are the 2 common ones. You can also do the command map dwg.stf, which will automatically convert your civil objects into SDF files. So you won't get, it kind of bypasses this one and just gives you right to the SDF files. And when we're talking GIS and civil and then adding more GIS to a data table, clicking on new feature from geometry on a feature layer and then actually adding in your line works to it and then manually plugging in the data, that's going to be the most common. I may have a shapefile that represents all my parcel lines for the city of Golden Valley. Well, we just took an outlot A, outlot B, and turned it into 100 family, single family parcels. Well, I've generated all those parcel lines in civil. I do have the capability of converting those polylines and then automatically adding them to that existing shapefile for the parcel lines. I have that capability of then, once it's in there, manually adding the PID information in there. So those are the three basic ways of doing civil information into GIS. The map export and the map DWG to SDF, I like using those the most if I'm starting from scratch and I want to create a brand new shapefile or an SDF file. If I have an existing GIS file, then I will use the new feature from geometry. The map export and the map DWG to SDF, using the object tables help make things a lot quicker and easier to construct. So let's actually go ahead and jump into the software once I find it. And what I'll do is, since a data connect is, I don't want to call it simple, I've already come in and I've done a data connect of Hennepin County. And here is my data connection of Hennepin County. I see my feature layer line. I have the ability to style and create new themes. Maybe my MTFCC code. Looks like I have 22 different MTFCC codes. So I could make a theme and I could change the colors of the lines based off of that code. That's just a basic data connect. What I want to do is I want to do a map import, just for the fact that not many people do map imports. So what I have is I have drawing 2, and I'm going to call it save, and this is going to be called MI, and then today's date 10/21/14. What I had mentioned earlier was the coordinate conversion. So what I have the issue of is, if you look down at the bottom of my screen, I have a coordinate system of none. So if I bring in any shapefile and I do a conversion, it's going to just drop it in as is. It's not going to know the XY, the northing, the easting of this coordinate, and then automatically transform it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to assign a coordinate system to it. And I'm going to assign Hennepin County U.S. Survey Foot to it. So now I see Hennepin County, Minnesota foot as my coordinates. Now what I want to do is I want to do a map import. So I go to the Insert tab, and I go to Map Import. And I have GIS data, Minnesota counties, Hennepin roads, Tiger 2009, got this from the U.S. Census, and I'm going to bring in the 2009 Tigers line file. It's a little bit older, but I brought it in specifically for the amount of columns that it had. So I'm going to bring that in, and now I get my options. Again, spatial filter says none, or I could do current display. Well, I just open up the brain drawing. I have no idea where I'm at. So will a spatial filter work for me right now? No, because I don't know where I really need to be. My input layer matches the name of the shapefile, but the drawing layer, I can actually come in and say, hey, let's put it on 0. Well, let's put it on def points. Yeah, def points really works. Whoops, I escaped out one too many times. The input coordinates is lat long 83, but it will convert my drawing to Hennepin County U.S. survey foot. The key on this is the data. So what I want to do is I want to expand data, and I actually want to say create object data. And what it's going to do is it's going to say object data table to use. What it does is it takes the layer name and says, yep, I'm going to create a data table, and I'm just going to call it that name. Well, what I like to do is I like to actually call it roads. And I'll show you why in a second. So I got roads, but now I want to say select fields. Here are all the codes, the columns in this shapefile. Well, guess what? I don't need this one. I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. Maybe I'll keep the left addresses. I'll keep the full name, the MTFCC code, and I don't care about the state because I know I'm always in Minnesota. And you know what? I don't even need the county because I know what county I'm in. So I have the ID, the MTFCC code, the full name, and then the left from address and the left to address. So I have basically these 5 columns. I'm eliminating these, the rest. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to say OK. Import polygons as closed polylines. Well, I know that these are lines, so running this one right here, it's irrelevant. But if I knew I was bringing a parcel shapefile or something that had closed entities, I'd want to check that. I'm just going to say OK. And it's going to take a couple seconds. There's just under 82,000 entities in this shapefile that is bringing in. We're doing pretty good right now. We're already pushing 40,000, so we're about halfway done. But what it's going to do is it's going to convert all those lines into polylines and lines. So I can actually manipulate it a little bit more in Civil 3D. It took 27 seconds to bring in 81,892 lines. Zoom extents. There is my line work for Hennepin County, and as you can tell, it's squared as Hennepin County U.S. survey foot. Now, can I convert this to, say, Carver County or Wright County or Ramsey County and have it stretch or reshape itself? No. These are nothing more than lines. So if I pick on a line, I see that it is nothing more than a polyline. I have a beginning X, a beginning Y. I have elevations. But here are my object data tables. It's called roads, and I got feature ID, MTFCC code, full name, left address, from left address to. Well, I can see that the line that I picked didn't have any information in it, so let's try to pick that one. There we go, County Road 24. It's basically, it looks like the 4,000 block, 4,037 to 4399. And so, but it's a polyline. I can now use this. I can, turn this polyline into an alignment and a profile if I want to, and rebuild County Road 24 based off of this GIS data. I don't need a surveyor to go out and shoot center line of road for me anymore. I have this information. The benefit, when I mentioned bringing in the roads data, is instead of leaving it as the layer name, is I'm going to do a quick map import one more time. And this time I'm actually going to bring in Carver County. And I'm going to say data. And I'm going to say create object data table. And I'm going to say roads. And I'm going to say select fields. What it does is it says, hey, you've already got a data table, and these are the 5 fields that you have in there. So I got ID, MTFCC, full name, left, to and from. So I'm going to say, yep, that's all I want. And I say, okay. I say, okay. And what this is going to do is it's going to now basically create one object data table for both counties. And what I can do is I can, when we talk about GIS or civil to GIS, is now I can actually take and create an SDF file or a shape file as one entity. And that's where it's nice, because a lot of the time I work in the 7 metro county area, but you know what, bringing in 82,000 entities for Hennepin and 24,000 entities for Carver County, once you get all 7 counties in there, you're looking at quite a bit of entries. So what I can do is I can filter down the information that I need, but because I did a map import as civil, I can now take everything out and create a new SDF or a new shapefile combining these 2 counties after everything's been reduced to what I want. So that's the map import, and I talked about earlier that the data connect stores everything outside the drawing, and then the map import stores everything in the drawing. A data connect of Hennepin County, the drawing size is 62K, pretty small. A map import of Hennepin County of the exact same shapefile, these 82,000 entities, that file is 13.5 megs. So you are looking at 200 times the size, even more than that, just by doing a map import versus data connect. So obviously, map import has its con of your file size is just going to be huge. Let's talk about the object data. I'm going to quickly jump to Bloomington, and I want to look at object data tables. So under the map setup tab, there's define object data. And what I've done is I've created a table called storm pipe and a table called storm structure. If I want to create a new one and call it webinar 1021, I can. And then I can say field name, presenter. That is going to be characters, description, name of presenter. And the default, anytime I use this table, it will be me. And I say add. Day of webinar. That one, I want it to be, I'll leave that as character too. Description, day. That way, someone could put in, oops, today's Tuesday, not Wednesday. Tuesday, 10/21/14. They could just put in 10/21/14. They could put in 10-21-14. Leaving it as a character, it leaves it open for how they want to bring in the information. I am selected to just the 4 integer, so it has to be numbers. Character, it can be numbers, it can be characters, it can be symbols. So like dashes, slashes, asterisks. It could be a point. I've never used a point. Or it can be a real number, so I can actually plug in 3.14 or 22.5, 22.5. And then I just say add. So what it does is I add my fields as I want. I give it descriptions. I give it a default value. The thing about the field name is it's not allowed any spaces. So that's why I actually put an underscore between day and of and webinar. You can't have a space. And the name of your table also cannot have a space. So I say, okay, I now have a new table. I have my 2 already built. I want to go ahead and assign the data to this. So what I do is I go ahead and I go to the Create tab, and I say Attach Detach Object Data. I jump to my storm pipe, and I say, yep, I want to attach. Now I will go ahead and attach it to all my information that I want to attach it to. Maybe I accidentally hit too many lines, one too many. I can detach and say, get rid of it. And that's what I've done right here. Here is, let me open up my storm mainline table, and I click on here. It is, come on, that is there, the pipeline, 01M52-P1. This is a shapefile. This must have been one of the inlet pipes and not the main line. So I can tell that this is a shapefile. This is a shapefile that's probably the storm inlet lead line. But this one right here is nothing more than a line on my storm pipe layer, but I've assigned that object data table to storm pipe, and it has these values in here. It's a round pipe, 27 inches in diameter. It's 100 foot long. Well, obviously it's not 100 foot long. It's 185 feet long. It's RCP. The invert in, invert out, I defaulted to 100 or 800 feet. Just so, hey, it's a nice round number. I know if I have to plug that information in. And then the structure to and from, I could put, hey, this is going from manhole 1 to manhole 2. So that is my information. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to create a brand new shape file of 1, 2, 3, 4, these 5 lines. So what I have is under the Output tab, I have the DWG to STF command, and I have file name. I'm going to call it Bloomington Storm. Say OK. Select all. I have a couple options here. I can actually say take everything on the storm pipe layer. Well, that works. But what if I have an existing network versus a proposed network, or I have proposal 1, proposal 2, proposal 3? Maybe I want to distinguish between which pipes get put where instead of just taking everything on a particular layer. So I'm going to say cancel. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to feature class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say select attributes. There's an object data. I can expand object data, and I can actually say, now take everything on storm pipe. Maybe I had an object data table for a proposed pipe versus existing pipe versus proposal 2 pipe. I just picked that one object data table, and I say OK. It's going to be called Bloomington Storm. And I say options really quick. I have the ability to convert the format. So it's going to leave it as Hennepin County U.S. Survey Foot, but I could convert it. Treat closed polylines as polygons. Now I have closed polylines. If it's a polyline and it's closed, it will actually treat it as a polygon. Right now, it's a line. It's pipe, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to say OK. And it quickly found 24 objects exported in nothing. Well, I have a handful of features in here that have that object data already assigned to it, not just those 5. But I'm going to come in and I'm going to say move slide that down just a little bit. I wonder if I snap to a pipe on accident. I lost it. That's fine. I don't need it anymore. Data, connect to data. I'm going to bring in my shape file or SDF file, And there's my Bloomington storm that, if I look, was created at 12:35 today, so no smoke and mirrors here. Say open, say connect. Already knows it's in Henry County, Minnesota, US foot. Add to map. Close out. And there are my lines. Let's click on my image. Let's actually just turn off my map. And oops, actually, there is my line for my STF file. There was my original line. I accidentally moved it and it went behind the image, and then I did undo and it brought it right back. And so, but I have both my lines right there. If I turn off my Bloomington storm that just came in, it just disappeared. So that was a really quick way to have object data tables and automatically create a shape file or a SDF file out of it automatically. The last thing, let's go back to aerial, is I have this line right here. If I look at its properties, it doesn't have an object data table assigned to it. So I couldn't add this in. But I have an existing pipe network right here. And this is my storm main line. What I want to do is I want to add these lines to this new SDF, or this existing shapefile. So I'm going to go to my storm main line, and I'm going to say new feature from geometry. I'm going to come in, I'm going to pick those lines and hit enter. Erase selected objects after operation? Yes. Now what it did was it put the feature ID down at the bottom. I did this on purpose. You have to add the feature one at a time, else it thinks that all 8 of those lines are one entity. So I would have to actually go in and manually click each line. Well, it can be time consuming, but if I already have that existing shapefile, it's a little bit easier. Maybe there is enough that maybe I want to create an individual shapefile and then do a map import of that shapefile, and then do a map import of my existing GIS data, and then do a map export and take everything with that object data of storm mainline pipe and create a brand new shapefile out of it. I can do that too. The only problem is if you've already got maps that are pointing to that original shapefile, you're going to have to update all your links. And so manually adding the information is going to be a lot easier. So the con, you got to add each line individually. You just can't add these 8 lines. So those were 2 of the 3 ways of doing civil to GIS. The last thing I didn't do was the bulk copy, and that is as simple as I'm going to come in, I'm going to show you a folder, D drive, training, map 3D, webinars. I have an export to GIS folder, and this folder is empty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Hennepin County data connected file right here, and I'm going to do a quick connect to data, and I'm going to call this webinar 10/21/14, and I'm going to select a folder. I'm going to path down to map 3D webinars, export to GIS, the folder that I just showed. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to say connect. That's all I have to do. Now what I do is I switch to the Map Explorer tab, Tools, Bulk Copy. Here's my source and my target. My source is going to be the layer of the shapefile. My target is going to be my webinar 102114 that I just created. That was under the shapefile connection name when I did the data connect. But now what I have the capabilities of doing is actually saying, you know what? I don't need all these codes. I only need, we'll leave the lefts in there. And you can't shift right click to do bulk selection. Another con, you have to actually manually come in and click each one. Almost done, almost to the bottom. And then the columns just keep growing because I wasn't all the way at the bottom. So 2 more. That quickly, I have a source. I have a webinar 1021. Ignore the following errors during copying. Insert errors, coordinate system, unmatched data, and geographic type. I leave that as is. I say copy now. Continue bulk copy. Let's add that. Cannot convert to Esri. Well, that's just funny. Let's just take a quick peek. Close. New. Open. Data connect. Shapefile. Export to GIS. It did not work for me. Well, isn't that funny? Should have been as simple as that. I'll have to look at, I think I might have done something to my shapefile beforehand. But this was an overall view of taking GIS data, bringing it in as GIS, and then just using it like as a background. And then taking GIS, bringing it in, and converting it to lines and polylines, that giving me the ability to then use it in civil. I then also took lines and polylines using the map export or the map DWG to SDF command and took civil data and exported it out as either a shapefile or an SDF. I did a bulk copy to take GIS data and bring it in as GIS data. I then also took GIS data, queried it down, filtered it down so I only saw certain information, and then did the export to SDF on there. So those are the basics. And what I'll do is I'll show you a few things that I did. We saw this one. I took proposed pipe networks, added an object data table to it, and then created an SDF file out of it. And if I turn it on, I see my line. I had just plain line work, and I was able to export that out as new geometry. And that's why as I hover over one line, all of it highlights because I selected it all at once. What I did was I created 2 map imports, one of Hennepin County, one of Carver County. I then exported it out as an SDF file based on the data table roads, and it became one solid entity. I then called it, on my SDF, I called it Hennepin and Carver. And when I looked at my query to filter, I said, only show me the codes MTFCC equals S1400. It means it's a primary road. It's not a highway, but it's not a side street. So now I have one shapefile. If I turn it off, it's one shapefile, but this circle right here, that is Highway 5 and County Road 41. There's Lifetime Fitness right there. This one right here is Highway 5 and Eden Prairie Road. This is Hennepin County. This is Carver County. This was a way that I was able to bring in multiple shape files, combine them into one, and then query it down. And that's what this is. This is Hennepin County. This is Carver County. I just did an area that says, hey, only show me this information. You saw my map import already. So just remember that, hey, if you map import, your file size is going to push 13 megs. If you do a data connect, your file size should be about under 100K based on the size.